Hello and welcome to part 2 of ChatGPT prompt engineering, not really for developers. I'm going to make this more for low code and no code tools. This course is available on deeplearning.ai for free. I am not associated with deep learning or OpenAI. However, this course was designed specifically, comes to you from the hands of God himself, OpenAI. However, this course is a little dry and it is for developers. So they're just doing things in Python, and they're also using some examples that are not exactly particularly useful. So I'm trying to give a business example here. And in that way, I'm going to use Stack AI. It's a free tool that you can use to call on the ChatGPT API. If you want me to do a deep dive on this video, leave a comment below and let me know, hey, I'd love to see how you made that. And we'll do that. But we're just going to keep it at a high level and use this as an example. So let's dig in. Today we're going to be learning about key principles that every prompt engineer should be using, especially when you start stitching together ChatGPT with coding tools or no-code tools. Two basic tenets are write clear and specific instructions. That does not mean to make it short. In fact, longer is typically better as long as you're making use of all that space and being concise and focused. The other principle we'll talk about is give the model time to think. This is kind of a weird one to think about, but I'll explain coming up. So let's break it down. First one, principle one, and I actually had ChatGPT spit out a .ppt file, a PowerPoint file, using a list of notes. And that was pretty awesome. It's like, wow, that was easy. I didn't know you could do that. But here we are. Clear and specific instructions. Delimiters. Delimiters are basically just things that separate chunks of text. That's it. This is done in programming all the time. However, in typical text interactions, we don't really do that. You might think of quotes, like a quote. There's one quote, and then the end, the quotes you know who is speaking. ChatGPT needs that sometimes. It needs to know when you're separating out something and identifying that block of text as something that is separate from something else. So dig in here and look at an example. I actually use it frequently, multiple times. I won't go into the details of this. It gets a little too complicated. Basically, we're asking this chatbot a question. We're going to get an answer out. We actually call ChatGPT API twice. We ask a question. Basically, we're trying to ask a question of this spreadsheet. I was an e-commerce store owner. Previously, this is my old business. This is real data. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to ask some questions of this spreadsheet? Sure, let's do it. So we need a way we stick the table in here, and to query that, we need SQL. So we create a table, and then we're going to convert this question into a SQL query. You can see I use delimiters here. The triple backtick is my favorite. And what's cool about Stack AI, it'll actually kind of be like code. It'll treat these, it'll highlight them similar to a code tool would. So pretty cool. So, I'm actually blocking out this example so it understands each of these examples. Boom, delimiter. On to the next one, structured output. What do you want ChatGPT to give you and in what format? We're not talking about tonality or style. We're talking about nuts and bolts. What needs to be spit out by ChatGPT? It can do markdown format, CSV. We're using a SQL query, JSON, HTML, code. It goes on and on and on and on. For non-tech examples, a bulleted list, a numbered list, a table, etc. All these are options, but you want to know what you're getting out. And this becomes more and more important again as we deal with code, because you're going to want it to be code, basically. We'll keep it moving. Check conditions, or simply put, as I like to call it, is just if not ideal output, throw me an error. I'll say that again. When you're crafting a prompt, if you're not giving me the answer that I want to know about it immediately, so I know that this part's broken and not this part, because we're using ChatGPT twice in the spot. So let's look down. I want this to output a SQL query. As we said, structured as a SQL query. And basically, I'm just saying the only answer in an SQL query, if you cannot give an answer in SQLite format, simply reply error. And so let's give an example here. What are unicorns? Hit run. I mean, actually, this might not throw an error here. Let's see where it breaks. Yeah, there we go, error. So that's all I wanted. I just wanted to say error, I don't know. And now I know, in this particular case, it's out of scope for this chatbot, right? So it's not necessarily an issue here, but I know the buck stopped here. And again, this is really important when we're prompt engineering because we need to know where things are breaking, right? This is much more, it gets much more complicated outside of just using the console, here. You're just talking to a thing, you're not connecting pieces like we are here. So, something to think about. Last one under this item, few shot prompting. All this is give ChatGPT examples. Give it examples. It responds really well to this. So here's what we did here. You're an SQL expert. Your role is to translate user questions into SQLite queries, convert user questions into output as SQLite queries. For example, which day did we have the highest CTR? And I gave, select day of the week from the table, order CTR by descending, limit 1. I don't know much about, I took it in college and I don't remember anything. So it's a beautiful world, but we don't have to deal with that. ChatGPT loves examples. Give it 1 at least if you can. 2, 3 does not hurt, especially if it's a more complicated thing. But give examples. Part 2 to this part 2 is give it time to think. The second one of this is a little bit tricky, but the first one is very simple. It's break it down. Break things down into steps. I don't have an example here on this bot, but I was trying to come up with another example here that would be interesting. I had it generate a fake sales calls transcript between a tech SDR and a tech CTO. I want a summary of this. Let's say that we live we're in an office that have Spanish-speaking folks too. We're in a business that has both English and Spanish-speaking folks. So I want that translated. I want a summary. I want to get it translated into Spanish too. And I want a generated list of action items. I want to stick that into a format. I want a structured output, right, into CSV. Now, what would I have said if I didn't break this down? I might have said, give me a Spanish summary and generate a list of action items in CSV format. I would have just given it boom. Now, I will say ChatGPT 4, pretty good at this. However, best practice, break everything down into steps. I could give one sentence, but it's best to do every little thing one step at a time. Give it time to think, give it time to process, right? So step 1, give me the summary. Step 2, translate the summary. I actually messed up and skipped step 2, but to step 3. Step 4, generate the list of action items, delimit, right, using brackets and squigglies. Step 5, output in CSV. So we're using all these examples kind of piled into one. Here's what it gave me. Here's the summary. Here's the summary in Spanish. So now both our Spanish-speaking and English-speaking folks have this. It did a pretty good job. It actually generated one more action item that I didn't think about, which is pretty good. And then output that into CSV. So boom, there we go. So one more summary. Clear and specific instructions. Delimiters. Separate chunks of text so that ChatGPT knows that's a separate entity to deal with on separate terms. Structured output, especially important as we start connecting all these pieces together. Check conditions, right? If not ideal output, throw an error. That way you know you screwed up at this particular point. And few shot prompting, right? For example, give examples. ChatGPT loves examples. Last but not least, give it time to think. Break it down. slow it down, break it down into little chunks, give it a list of things to do. It does better. I forgot also output in whatever structure you want, but indicate the structure. So that's it. If you want a full breakdown, I can show you how to make this from start to finish in another video. Put that in the comments. Otherwise, click the subscribe button and get ready for part 3. It's going to be fun.